So welcome to another edition of the Friday Featured Business, brought to you by Visibility Impact and your host, myself, James Moffat. And we have today our 79th guest. Wow, 79, right? But 79 is a significant number also for Karen, who is our guest. So Karen, I'm just going to introduce you. Maybe you can just quickly introduce yourself because I will always get this wrong. So Karen, you are our 79th guest. So just say a little bit about you and then we'll get going.
Well, first of all, thanks for having me here. I'm an author, creator of 𝗬𝗢𝗨𝗥, an inspirational cartoon, and also coach, even though I like to use other words like guide or mentor. And I help people basically reignite their inner child, remember their dreams, rescue their dreams, and make them happen.
Excellent. Okay, so hi, Paul. Right. Paul, your hair's getting longer every time I see you. Or is that a wig?
No.
Right. Okay, so Karen, so could you just pronounce your surname because I'll probably get that wrong.
Pinter, Karen Pinter, like Harold Pinter.
Oh, okay.
Distant relation, apparently.
Oh, yeah? Oh.
Apparently.
Oh, very good. Okay, so we aren't going to kick it off this week with a song because Emily is running a little bit late, but she will join and then we'll have a pause as we go through for a song from Emily. So let's get started. So who wants to know Karen's story? Right, okay. Right, so here we go. We're going to start from the beginning. So just take you back to memory lane. Okay, and I'm just going to, okay, right. Take you back on a little journey through your childhood up to where we are now. So people get to know and a bit more of a feel about you. So before we get started, whereabouts are you in the world and where are you originally from?
I'm currently in the Sierra of Huelva, even though I'm splitting my time between this area and a town called Carmona near Sevilla. And I was originally born and raised in Marbella to foreign parents who had relocated there and discovered each other, fallen in love, gotten married, all that wonderful stuff. And I was born and raised there, so was my brother. I spent most of my life in Marbella, basically mixing more with all the foreigners. Our neighbors are all Spanish. We grew up in one of the more modest areas of Marbella, not the glitzy part that gets slapped all over the media. So it was a very modest upbringing in a very mixed environment. And it wasn't until I was almost 30 that I discovered Vancouver in Canada.
Okay,
fell in love with the place. Yes.
Just you jumping 30 years ahead.
Yeah. I thought you wanted a quick summary of how
No. We'll come to that on the journey.
Okay.
Right. So your parents are Spanish?
No, my father was Austrian, my mother's American.
All right. Hence the good English accent.
Yes. And I went to British schools in the Marbella area.
Yeah. I never thought you were Spanish. Well, I mean, technically you're not, you're just born there.
That's a deep conversation to have about who we are as
But
people born and raised in a different place than our parents.
Yes. Yeah, my kids also, because my wife is Brazilian and I'm from the UK, so, and they were born in Switzerland. Yet they don't have a Swiss passport.
Right.
All right. But anyway, you speak German as well?
Klein bisschen.
Ah.
I speak fluent Spanish, English, a little bit of German. My dad was teaching us when we were younger.
Yeah.
But he got scared because we were mixing things up and he didn't realize that kids, they absorb each language and then they filter it out when their brain figures it all out. And so he just stopped teaching us German. Later on, I learned a bit more. I can understand a fair amount, but I'm not quite conversational yet.
All right. Yeah, I say that because I live in Switzerland and I'm in the German speaking part, but it's not actually German, it's Swiss German, which is a huge difference.
Yeah.
But
my dad used to joke about that because he would travel a lot to Switzerland for business meetings. And he would always tell us about the Italian part of Switzerland, the German part, all of these differences and even cultural differences between them.
Yeah, I mean, for the kids, I mean, when you said ambition, yeah, that's the same as me, because if it's High German, I'm kind of okay, but Swiss German, I'm completely lost. But the kids similar. I mean, they speak Portuguese. I mean, that's similar to Spanish, and they speak English with me.
Once you have Italian, Spanish, or Portuguese,
Exactly. Yeah.
you can pretty much understand any of the other two, even though there are certain differences, but at least reading it, you can get a better idea. Pronunciation does differ, obviously. But
I mean, we could talk about languages for a lot, because I mean, there are significant differences also between Brazilian Portuguese and Portuguese Portuguese. But anyway, so let's move on. So mainly you speak now, I mean, living in Spain, I guess, Spanish, or is it English as well?
Mostly Spanish right now, based on where I am. If I were back on the coast, I'd probably be speaking a lot more English.
Okay.
But also because I haven't tapped into the English speaking community here that does exist.
Okay. So just a question, a silly question, but when you dream, what language do you dream in?
Mostly in English, but I have had Spanish dreams.
Yeah. Okay. You can switch in your dreams.
Yeah.
Okay. It's just, I don't know, crazy kind of thought about what you're dreaming. I mean, mine's always like bad English, like my dreams. But anyway, so you, where were you? I mean, where are you now then?
I'm in a small town called 𝗪𝗡𝗦𝗧, which is near the town Aracena, which is in the Sierra, in the mountains of Huelva.
Yeah. So Connie, you know the area around there?
A little bit, yes.
Oh, okay. Okay. And you speak Spanish with each other?
Sí, claro.
With Connie?
Sí, cuando quieras.
Hola, Karina. Hola, Cornelia.
Okay.
But that's all mine.
Okay.
But Karen, where you are now is not far from the Portuguese border, though.
No, it's not.
So
and I know in summer a lot of Portuguese come here to visit.
So it's a beautiful kind of colonial type, quiet.
Very
place.
quiet. This is more than a village. This is basically a little village where I'm at, and there's a cluster of little villages around the area, and it's mostly just mountain setting. Lots of trees here, lots of trails to go hiking. It's a very natural way of life.
And that's, I mean, I love that kind of way of life as well. I think all the guests kind of like that. I mean, everyone that I've sent the questionnaire out to, they've all said the same. They love the nature and being outdoors and hugging trees and stuff like this. Right. But anyway, so you right. So let's take you on some kind of memory lane stuff. I mean, as a kid growing up, I mean, having different parents as well. I mean, we'll come to the Vancouver the bit shortly, but growing up, I mean, what were your kind of interests and hobbies?
We had a very creative household. My dad used to be a musician. In fact, his whole early day career was playing music, and through playing music, he paid for his studies in civil engineering. So that was the second half of his life. He was no longer playing music as he had before when I grew up, but we had instruments in the house. He always had his violin. I actually have his violin with me now. He always encouraged music. There was always music at home. We had a lot of books. My mother was an avid reader. So we just grew up with a lot of books, access to music, and access to creativity. My dad was always fixing things at home. I learned very early on how to cut wood and solder. And then I started to learn how to shape things. And in school, obviously, we were already playing with clay and stuff like that. So it was a very creative, rich creative environment. Of course, we went out and played. I played football on the street with my brother and the neighbors. We'd go out with our bikes. Every now and then we go as a family and take a hike through the forest up there in the mountains behind Marbella. But mostly it was a lot of reading, music, listening, playing. I tried the violin when I was 8, but I just couldn't quite get it. I think it was a mix of how am I supposed to know which notes to play? And these strings are really, really, really hard on my fingers. So it wasn't until a few years later that I fell in love with the guitar. And then I picked one up. I was basically given a guitar by a family friend. to test the waters to see if it's something that I really wanted to do. And I stuck with it. And I found a guitar teacher, because my dad, even though he could teach me theory, he was very upfront. He said, I can't really teach you that specific instrument. Let's find you someone who can. And so I started to go to weekly lessons, and that just became my instrument, the classical guitar. And eventually I saved up and bought my first one.
So you still play
got me
now?
on the musical train.
You're still
I
playing
do.
the guitar? Have you got
Yeah.
it there?
I'm not going to do a cameo session right now. I know where you're going with that.
Myself and
I'm
my
not
wife,
ready for the public. I don't generally play for the public, but anyways, go ahead.
I'm also a guitar player, but I don't play now. I used to. And
Well, we
also
could have a
my wife.
jam. You could have a jamming session. You see, Boyan can get his guitar.
I'm not ready for that yet.
Yeah, we had a guest that plays the sitar. Did you see that?
Nice.
You watch that?
No, I didn't see that one yet.
All right, you should watch that one.
Okay.
She was excellent.
Mm.
Right? Did you sing as well?
I'm not really much of a singer. My interest in music was always more the personal challenge, loving an instrument, wanting to set myself any challenges and play beautiful pieces that I loved, and also learn how to compose. And that's kind of where I left off my musical path in my early 20s, late teens. That's the other part of my story of getting into the tech world. But I kind of left it hanging there. I was already at a point where I was pretty well advanced in guitar, and I was just starting to play with writing music. That's where I stopped, and that's what I'd like to recover.
Okay.
Now that I've picked it all up again.
Okay. So did you write your own music as well, or just?
I was starting to write music, melodies. I wrote a lot of lyrics that I've never put any music to, but I've always been a big soundtrack fan.
Okay.
So my idea was to compose soundtracks.
Oh, okay. So if you could compose a song with someone, who would it be with?
That would be with 𝗪𝗓𝗨.
𝗪𝗓𝗨. And why in particular 𝗪𝗓𝗨?
I fell in love with the band, with Take That, when I was a teenager.
Oh, does everyone know who 𝗪𝗓𝗨 is, by the way?
Okay. Do you remember a band called Take That? UK pop band?
No, they don't know Take That. Where have they been?
Take That, yes, but 𝗪𝗓𝗨.
You must have heard of Robbie Williams, haven't you? Heard of Robbie Williams? Right, he was in, prior to going solo, he was in a band called Take That.
Mm-hmm.
And the lead singer at the time was 𝗪𝗓𝗨.
Okay.
Right,
Lead
you'll know
singer,
the
lead
songs if you
composer.
hear them.
Yeah.
We are getting closer.
Yes, we do.
All right.
You know, I'm also a good singer, but for some reason, James doesn't allow me to sing. Maybe everybody will escape.
So anyway, but you had the opportunity to go and share your story. You went to see Take That.
I did. It
Where
was
was
all
that?
your typical, well, Take That was, they hit their first stride when I was a teenager, when I was already looking at what I could do creatively. I'd already started to learn how to play the guitar. I was curious about the piano, also a big Elton John fan. So I love any kind of composition based on a good piano melody and chords. And so I loved Take That's pop music. I found it interesting. And the more they evolved as a band, the more I liked the music they were putting out. But then they split up. This was in '95, I think. And that was a big shock for me, because my dream at that point was to go study sound engineering and tour with them. So of course that dream just went poof.
So where did you see them? You were in Spain at the time.
Well, the concert was years later. So I was living in Spain at that time. The band finally split up after a few years. And it wasn't until I think 2003 or 4 that they regrouped as a 4-piece without Robbie Williams. And I was just about to move to Vancouver at that time. So I was like, oh, Take That together again. But it hadn't quite clicked for me. And then finally, when they, in 2011, decided to release their Progress album, in which Robbie Williams was finally collaborating again, and they announced that they were going to go on tour, I was already in California then, working with my first coach, rekindling my own dreams and all of this fun stuff. And something in me said, I need to go to that concert. It was that it's now or never feeling. And I did everything I could to get my ticket. Serendipity, I think, played along a big part there, because they announced the tickets sales. And because I'd never been to such a big concert, I was a bit scared, to be honest. And this was at Wembley Stadium. And I wanted to book the ticket for my actual birthday, because I thought, what better way to celebrate my birthday at Wembley Stadium with my favorite band, all 5 of them. But I emailed a couple of friends who lived in London to say, hey, I'm a fan of this band. Do you guys want to come to the concert with me? Kind of like, let's go together. They didn't answer. And by the time I thought, let me book the ticket, the tickets were sold out. And I thought, oh. And yet a part of me felt like there was still hope. There was still something that would turn around. And I think a few months later, or a few weeks later, they announced that they were issuing more seats. So they'd opened up more tickets. And I thought, I have to book this ticket. I'm going to buy it and then tell my friends. And if they want to come along with me, they can. If not, I'm still going. And so I bought my ticket. I actually still have the ticket somewhere. I don't know. It's somewhere else, but I have it with me. And so the irony was, it was like a 50 pound ticket, but I was in LA at that time.
And an airfare.
A $1,400 airfare.
So it's an expensive concert.
Yeah, but it was just one of those things, you have to do, because otherwise you're like, what if I had never done that?
Yeah.
And that was actually the summer that I finally decided to recommit.
You should have called me.
My books.
I was living in London in 95.
I didn't know you then.
Yeah. I would have gone with you.
I'm sure you would have. That would have been fun. But that was the summer that I also decided to recommit to publishing my books and bringing 𝗬𝗢𝗨 back into my life and the lives of others. So it was a very symbolic one, going to spend my birthday literally at Wembley Stadium with 85,921 people. The people that I came across in London when I was on my way to the concert, they would just all ask me, like, why are you here in London? I said, I'm going to go see Take That. And I flew here from LA. And I'm like, you did that for them? I'm like, yeah. It blew my mind that people were so jaded with their own lives that they couldn't even accept or appreciate somebody fulfilling something special. They didn't even think to ask that. It was just like, literally, you came here just for that. But I got a lot more out of that trip, because I was walking through Hyde Park, which is one of my favorite places in London, thinking about this book that I had written 10 years ago. It was a book about an owl with friends in the forest, metaphorical, metaphysical, spiritual stories about life and friendship. And by that time, I had already started working with my first coach in LA. And one of the things, she was an NLP coach. And one of the things we always started our training sessions with was, what are your goals? What are your dreams? Just write them down. Don't filter, don't judge, just pour it all out. And the first things that always came up were writing and 𝗬𝗢𝗨, things that I wanted to recommit to, which I wasn't doing then. I had stopped doing that. We'll get back to the creation of 𝗬𝗢𝗨 or the birth of 𝗬𝗢𝗨 in a minute.
Okay.
Because you're probably wondering, who is Nikki?
Is that a pun?
It was a pun. It was a pun. So that summer, I was thinking about all of this, like, what can I do? And finally, it dawned on me to put 𝗬𝗢𝗨 as my character in the book, finally as the main character, and put in my life stories and basically tell my story of my time in Canada through the eyes of 𝗬𝗢𝗨 migrating as a bird to this new country. And it was all a story of adaptation, new friendships, a lot of these things that we all go through in life and all the challenges we face.
No, I love it. So, I mean, that inspiration. So, I mean, you mentioned that. So you went from LA to London to go to Wembley to see Take That. People question why you would do something like this. And then next minute, you're walking through Hyde Park and kind of that inspiration came to you more so to focus on 𝗬𝗢𝗨𝗥 that you had
Yeah.
had 10 years previously.
Yeah, because
Right.
10 years previously, I was doing a lot of writing,
Mhm.
and I had just basically in a week or two, I think, written this manuscript of all these little short stories. They were like sketches, life sketches,
Mhm.
very simple stories. And it just came out.
Okay.
But I never did anything with that book.
Okay. But 𝗬𝗢𝗨𝗥 was already called 𝗬𝗢𝗨 10 years ago.
Yes.
All right. So how did you come across the name?
The name was interesting. I had a couple of friends at that time
And the
who
character?
were named
The name
the
and
character.
the character. Yeah.
Well, let's go back to the birth of Nikki, shall we? First of all, for those of you who don't know Nikki yet, this is Nikki.
Mhm.
Hello, 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 hello.
Hello.
And so back around 1995, when this whole, my musical world was taking shape, I loved cartoons. I've always loved cartoons, whether it was Disney, whether it was Garfield, Snoopy. My dad would always buy the Herald Tribune on the weekends. And at the back was Garfield and Snoopy and Dennis the Menace and all these other cool characters. And I just loved all the cartoons. And I would literally cut out the Garfield strip and stick it in a notebook and color it in. So I had all these notebooks of all these comics that I was collecting over time.
You still have it?
And no, I don't think so. Maybe my mother has it. But I just love drawing, and I started to basically doodle around on a page one day. And this little bird just happened to show up on my page. And I thought, well, that's going to be an owl. I don't know why I picked an owl. I think the owl picked me, to be honest. And I just started to draw that. And at the time I was going to church with my family. And every week we'd always spend time after Mass getting to know each other, having little celebrations, birthdays, whatever. And the tradition was to always, somebody would buy a card, everybody would sign it and give it to the person. Or if it was a get well card because somebody was in hospital or somebody was sick, well, we'd sign a card and somebody would make it reach them. And somehow I just started to get commissioned to make our cards. So I built up this huge archive of birthday cards, of wedding cards, of get well soon, all with Nikki. And they were always personalized. I would always think about the person, something they liked or something that was going on in their lives. And I would draw something like that for them with Nikki as the character. And that's how Nikki was born and started to take shape.
Why
basically, he was, why Nikki? Quick comment. Basically, he was my answer to boredom and the creativity that I was wanting to develop. And so why Nikki? I had two friends later on, 98, 99.
Congratulations.
I had two friends, yes, thank you. Took a long time. But I had two friends who were called Nikki. One was a friend's son and the other was her brother. Sorry, her brother's partner. And I just thought it was synergistic to meet two people, child and adult at the same time, called Nicholas.
Mm-hmm.
And I liked the short version, Nikki. And I thought, well, what if I just change the spelling to make it even shorter and cuter and write it the way I write it, N-I-K-I. Because Nikki is also, he's an ambassador for our inner child, whether you're literally still a physical child or whether you're an adult. And so that was a nice symbol or sign for me to pick up that name and say, this is going to be 𝗬𝗢𝗨𝗥 from now on. Because I wanted something short, cute, simple, relatable. And that's how Nikki came to be.
Okay. So let's just park Nikki for a moment. And okay. So you said you went to LA. So to meet your mentor or something, a coach?
No, basically I ended up in LA because going back to our Vancouver part, I couldn't stay in Canada. I wanted to set up my whole life there, but I couldn't.
So you leave in Spain to go to Vancouver?
I left Spain for Canada, yeah.
Right.
And then I hit a wall with my work permit. And Europe had basically just fallen to pieces in 2008. And so it didn't really make sense to come back to Spain at that time. And so it seemed easy and more viable to go down to LA while I tried to sort out
But
paperwork for
you'd
Canada.
already packed up everything and moved to Canada.
Yeah, I took that leap of faith.
All right. And then once you got there, I mean, you're allowed as a tourist or visitor, X amount of months or whatever.
Yeah. And while I was there, it was like, okay, this is really what I want. Now, how do I make it happen? And then.
And why in particular Vancouver?
I met a friend in Marbella who was originally from Vancouver, raised there. And he was actually going to move back because his parents were getting older and he just felt the call. The irony was he couldn't stand Vancouver because he's all about sunshine and 35-degree weather. And that's not what Vancouver is. It's rain and much colder. But it just enamored me. I just felt like I wanted to take a vacation. I was actually going to go that summer to Vienna and explore my dad's birth city. But I ended up changing my mind and going to Vancouver instead. And I fell in love with that city. It felt like a bigger version of Marbella with a mountain backdrop, with water, everything pretty much at hand, and a deeper green than I was used to. And so something just felt
a bit colder in the winter, I guess.
Yeah, but you know what? It was nice to have a white Christmas. I'd never had one before.
So how long were you there before you were kind of told that you can't stay?
Well, I was coming back and forth between Spain and the States. Between visits, so it was probably about a year or so, year and a bit.
I mean, and now would it be a problem? Or it's the same
I haven't
bureaucracy?
looked at that for quite a while, to be honest.
But because you couldn't stay there any longer, then you decided you didn't want to go back to Spain. And how did you end up in LA then? I
had a couple friends in LA, one whom I'd met in Marbella, who had then relocated back. You've got friends everywhere. LA. Apparently I do. And and basically I was told, come spend some time here and see what you can do, figure out if you can get back to Canada or stay. And so I stayed with them for a while, and then I realized Canada wasn't viable anymore. And I just started to build up life there. And that's where, through business networking, I met my first coach. So I'm just curious because I mean, we use the internet for everything now. I mean, we virtually can meet anyone from anywhere in the world, right? But it wasn't like this in those days. So, I mean, how did you network and how did you get to know all these people? A lot of faith and trust in people that I already knew, and them trusting me. And just relationships. Where did you meet them? I mean, in Spain on. Yeah, Marbella is a very interesting hub of lots of people from around the world who, whether they stay or whether they go, it's like a portal. Yeah. Most of my friends didn't think I'd ever leave Marbella, and then I did. All right. Okay. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, I just remember, like, I mean, there's no mobile phones when I was growing up as a kid and stuff like that. No internet as we know it. And well, we were there then. I was already internet. I was probably one of the first of my own group of friends who knew how to use Skype because I used it for work. Yeah, I was lucky if I knew people 10 blocks away. But anyway, not the other end of the world. So how long were you in LA for? Whereabouts in LA were you? I was in West Hollywood. Oh. And networking in Beverly Hills with the BNI chapter there. Did I not see you in the movie? No. Oh, okay. Okay. Yeah. And no, I didn't have breakfast at Tiffany's either. Yeah. I passed by, but. You went in a Matrix movie or something? No. Oh, okay. No, but then LA is the Matrix in its own right. So. Yeah, it is. So, yeah, I mean, I went to LA, went to actually Santa Barbara, which was quite nice. Really like that area. Although I always felt I was in the Truman Show. I was busy looking around for the cameras and thinking, how does this person walk the dog at the same time every day at the same place? And I walk past them. That car's parking in the same place at the same time every day. But anyway, so how long in total were you in LA? And what did you do? You said you had a coach or something. Yeah. I connected with my coach. She was doing the rounds looking for clients for her next program. She was Canadian, actually, which called to me at that point because I was still hurting from not being able to be in Canada the way I'd hoped. And I was very sensitive to a lot of things. And of course, I'm like, oh, Canadian, yes. But something intuitively told me that I needed to start working on me. because if everything that I'd done up until that point didn't get me exactly what I wanted, which in hindsight, actually that whole chapter about Canada it really had nothing to do with me. It was more of a stepping stone. When I look back, it was I couldn't stay there because I needed to be somewhere else. But at that time in LA, I met my first coach at one of these networking meetings, and I just felt like I needed to look at me, look more within. And that was my intuition telling me, you need to rescue your own dreams, because they had been forgotten on the wayside. And so that was a turning point for me to meet her and start thinking about that again and actually doing something about it.
So was there a restriction on time that you could stay in LA or in the US?
No.
Without a green card?
I didn't need one.
I mean, but you could stay, because you had a US passport as well?
My mother's American, yeah.
Oh yeah, okay.
Yeah.
But so you have an American passport as well?
Yeah.
Dual nationality?
Yes.
Well, you actually have 3 nationalities.
Can only have 2 maximum.
Oh, right, okay. Really?
That I'm aware of. I don't know.
But
Only one citizen of the world.
No, I mean,
that would be ideal.
Our kids have 3. I mean, the British, Portuguese, and Brazilian.
I think a lot of it depends on the agreements between either continents or countries, and how much they say, okay, we'll accept that if you were born with it or born into it. Yeah. There's a lot of different nuances. I don't know them all, but
I just want one.
Okay.
A person of the earth.
Yes.
Right. And then it's all of them. Right. Anyway, so from LA, how long were you there before you decided where did you go next? Back to Spain?
No, I did a few laps around the States. I went to Texas for a while, and then I ended up in Colorado for another while, and then I ended up in Oregon for another bit, and then I decided it was time to come back to Spain. Right. It wasn't, no, I had wanted to come back to Spain before that. I just couldn't. I basically got kind of locked in financially. I couldn't make that step.
Okay. So, I mean, from living in LA and different places around the world, or particularly in the States, then being where you are now, I mean, it was a good kind of contrast between kind of a busy city to something very quiet.
There's been a lot of contrast.
Yeah. So you don't miss what you had, or you've experienced that and it was good at the time, but now this is more what you were looking for.
For now, this is what I'm looking for, because I feel like I have moved around a lot. And in those moves, a lot of other things have been happening personally, professionally, worldly. And this is a bit of a respite from all of that.
Okay. So let's kind of learn more about, so you've done some coaching, you found a bit more about yourself. And so what are you doing with it? What are you doing now?
Right now, I'm working on more cartoons and books with 𝗬𝗢𝗨𝗥, now tapping more into the bilingual English-Spanish market, using a lot of the coaching tools that I learned, not just to work with people one-on-one, but also to develop more work with kids, especially kids workshops, using creativity, using 𝗬𝗢𝗨𝗥 as their spiritual creative guide, and basically trying to repurpose everything that I learned in ways that are more accessible.
So 𝗬𝗢𝗨𝗥, I mean, for clients, I mean, 𝗬𝗢𝗨𝗥 is more for children, or can it be used in business as well?
Well, ironically, this was the creativity book that I wrote with 𝗬𝗢𝗨𝗥, which, let me backtrack to the first book. This is the first edition, very first copy of Leap of Faith. This is the novel that I wrote based on those stories of an owl in the forest, speaking with his friends, talking about life. This is the version where I then put 𝗬𝗢𝗨𝗥 in properly as the main character, telling the story of his move to Canada. Sorry, microphone. And so this is an illustrated novel, which you can sort of see there. And it was a way to incorporate my drawings of Nikki and my writing.
So this is about anything in particular, or it's just a collection of different thoughts and ideas?
It is the story of a little owl from Spain whose curiosity about life takes him on extraordinary adventures around the world. In this first book, Nikki takes a huge leap of faith and leaves his home forest of Spain, to find adventure in Canada.
Okay. So it's really based on you, but Nikki is the character.
Correct.
Nikki. So have you heard the story? I don't know if it's a story or a poem or whatever. It's a kid's nursery rhyme. The Owl and the Pussycat.
Yes.
Yeah, said it to my kids the other day. The Owl and the Pussycat went to sea in a little pea green boat. The owl said to the pussycat, "Will you marry me?" And then it sailed away for a year and a day to the land where the piggy-wig lives. You know it?
Yeah, I didn't remember it, but I know it.
Oh, it's so funny because I do these stories with my kids, but we break into character, you see, and we add bits to it, so it becomes funny. But I absolutely love what you do, and I think that's how we got connected as well, because I saw Nikki Owl, and I mean, I have a passion for doing things with, I mean, stories for kids as well. I mean, we have our first book as well with Tom and Dudu and their marvelous adventures. Right. I showed you that, didn't I?
You did.
All right, okay. So anyway, so we want to, what you've done, I think, is really quite magical, because at the moment, I mean, just digressing a little bit, which you can probably pick up on, a lot of kids at school of all ages have some, I mean, I don't like to say the word mental health problems, but I mean, they have some kind of emotional problems at the moment. And I think a lot of them don't want to identify it's them. So if you can introduce a character like you have, then they can relate to the character, and then they can say how the character feels, because it's not them, it's someone else.
It's a disassociation that helps kids and adults. And that's part of the work on the coaching level of helping people work through their issues without feeling like there's something wrong with them. When you can disassociate and look at that same problem through someone else's eyes or through someone else's story, it can be easier to then acknowledge it within yourself and go, okay, maybe I should change that part of me and work on that. And that's where the creativity book came into play, was basically something that I needed to make for me, already working in the coaching field, rescuing Nikki Owl. And then I realized, what if I take part of these tools that I've learned? I took the illustrations from this original book, and then I started to make these little kind of activity pages. I don't know if you can see all of it.
Yeah.
And using Nikki Owl as your spiritual, personal, professional guide to create the life you desire. And so this book, I finally then, once I was back in Spain, translated into Spanish. Initially, I used it with adults. And a lot of the people I started working with initially, they hadn't touched the coloring pencil in years. My first client in Portland, he literally took a pencil like this. No, we're not going to stab anyone.
You thought it was a knife.
But he literally said, I haven't touched this stuff since I was 10. And he came to me for a business help. And I said, why don't you just start delving back into who you are, the essence of who you are, what's important to you, because that will fuel who you do business with, who you speak to, and why you do business with them, and present yourself in a different way. And so that's what I started working on, the inner kid in the adults. Since I've been back in Spain, especially in Carmona, we did a project last year in schools with kids 9 or 10 years old. I was more of the creative wing, pun intended, but I was working with 2 other creatives, one another author, the other an artist. And the program was to help educate in values through writing and through art. And so even though my purpose in that project was mostly to design the book that they created with the kids, I also did a workshop with the kids, using Nikki Owl as an example of, if you have a dream and you have something that you want to create and you already know what it is, start with it and run with it. And here's a few ideas of how you can start to format. I spoke a lot about the web technologies, for example, and social media, just to give them a vision of what is possible just with one idea. And they fell in love with that. And so it was a nice way to introduce Nikki to the kids without basically saying, this is Nikki by Nikki. And that was a way to also be more relatable, to say, I created this when I was a little bit older than you guys, but still not quite an adult. And in all this time, even though I stopped for a while, this is what I've been able to create. And then I rediscovered the purpose behind it, and that's given me more fuel to use this as a vehicle for change and for good and improvement in personal lives.
Yeah, I think it's beautiful. So would you, I mean, if you had a preference, would you prefer to work with adults or children?
I think both are important, to be honest. And that was also part of the reason behind the first book. Even though I wrote it in a very simplistic way, most of the people who actually read it at the time were people around about my age at that time, kind of hitting that 30 plus or minus benchmark, where a lot of adults, they're not at that 40-year crisis yet, but they're at I finished my university studies, I've started to work, but maybe this is really not what I wanted. They're already feeling a big shift in their lives and establishing all of that previous learning. And so that was an interesting sector to be talking to and hearing from. But my idea with Mickey has always been a bridge between the adult and the child, to help the child maintain their imagination and help develop their dreams, and for the adult to remember theirs and not block their own children, or their students from fulfilling their potential, or at least exploring how far they can go with it.
Yeah, I love it. And as I said, I think there's more and more need for that now, particularly over the last couple of years. I mean, people's heads are spinning. I mean, we've been confused and disillusioned with life and everything else. And not just people in the workplace, but children particularly. And I mean, I worked in a school a month or so ago, an international private boarding school, American one in Switzerland. And I could tell, I mean, I was doing storytelling and I showed them the book that I've created as well. And you can see the problems that they've got. But then it's taken it, what do you do with them? How do you then take it forward? And I love in the way that you've introduced a character, because then you can use that to play around with, and people can relate to that, and you can create programs around that. And yeah, I mean, like as you said, picking up a pencil for the first time. I mean, I do it a lot with the kids now, and actually when they have something to color in, I'm trying to do it without going over the line when you're coloring in something. Right? So, but I mean, it's like bringing the child back out through you.
Yeah. Well, this book in particular, friends in Oregon, she was working with an elderly care facility, and she convinced her boss, because she was brought in to help build the team up, because the team attitude, the way they were even treating the people they were being paid to care for, was not good. And she figured it out because she'd put her mother in that residential home, and she realized that there was some lack in terms of caring for her and follow up with families, and how that impacted the family's confidence and trust in where they had placed their parents. And so she offered the owner of this company to go help clean up the system. And she bought a whole stack of books, 150, I think, for the team. Not for the people living there or staying there, but for the team. And she wanted to do a whole program with them based on this book. I think she left a little sooner than she wanted to. But she said, even just after giving them the books, within a week or two, I already had people coming to me that had never dared to come to me before. And I know that that was based on the book, because it was starting to give them some confidence to think about themselves and also think about their impact on the lives of the people that they were working with and caring for. So that was a nice unexpected avenue as a team building book.
I find, I mean, if you work with schools, then it's not just about the children, it's very much the teachers as well, because you can encourage the kids to open up and be more interactive. But if the teachers don't want to participate in this, then you're going to have a battle between the kids and the teachers.
Yeah, the problem I think with now knowing a lot more about schools here and just even personal experience and remembering is if the teacher doesn't show up with a positive attitude and loving their job, that is going to infect the attitude in the classroom. And then, of course, what is the attitude at home? And there's been a lot of kind of kicking the ball to one another, saying it's your fault, it's the parents need to do better, the teachers need to do better, instead of looking for points of cohesion to say, okay, our task as parents is this, your task as teachers is this. There are crossover points, because how each one of us speaks to children will teach those children how to speak to themselves and to others. And one of the big gaping holes in most of our educational world up until recently has been emotional education.
Absolutely.
Kids are super stressed because they're not being told or shown properly how to handle stress, anxiety, lack, nothing. So it's exacerbated.
I've seen that as well. I mean, I have 3 of my own kids, and I see that. I mean, I focus a lot on emotional intelligences as well, and expressing the way you feel. It's not always about being the best at something, being the best at maths, being the best at this and that. I mean, that is nice if they are, but it doesn't mean that that's the focus. I mean, it's also about how they interact. I mean, looking at my 3 kids, they've all got different personalities. One might be better at maths, but the other one has got a heart of gold. And where he might not be so good at maths, you see particularly better at something else. Now, you need to nurture that out of kids because they don't get that. And then if they don't get that at school, when they go into work, then they're missing that emotional connection as well. Why do you do your job? What's the passion and desire for doing it? I mean, it's not just about the money at the end of the month. Well, maybe in some cases it is, but if that's what life is about, that's an existence. And there's a difference between existing and living. And I think you need to capture them at a young age. But I find that a lot of the storytelling I do for the kids is applicable in the workplace because kids question, whereas in the workplace, they don't question. Because
they've been taught not to question.
Yeah, just get on and do it because I'm the boss. Whereas a kid will question, well, why am I doing that, Daddy? And I think, because of this, that, and that. So they'll ask, but you ask that in the workplace, well, if you want to keep your job, keep your mouth shut. Kind of thing, right? And just do it. And that's the society that we've been brought up in. And it's hard to break that chain. So where are you at the moment? I mean, so you've got that. I mean, when you have clients now, so how do you find your clients? And now that you're in kind of this remote place, I mean, are the clients going to be more online or you're going to travel?
I mean, I haven't really tapped into the market, so to speak, here. I've just been focusing the last few months on pure creativity, writing, and all of these things that I've been wanting to nurture more in myself. What I've been doing mostly is whether it's LinkedIn or other connections that I've already had from other work, from marketing and stuff. That's how I built my client base. Okay,
so is there something that, because you've got two different types of clients. I mean, you've got kind of the average person in the workplace, maybe, and then you've got children. So would you be targeting schools in one hand and kind of corporate organizations or what?
For 𝗬𝗢𝗨, more of schools or even, I don't know how you call them, but there's a lot of centers here that provide support to kids with special needs, whether it's helping them study math or things like that they don't quite get when they're at school. So there's a lot of centers that do that kind of support work. And of course, they lean into psychology, speech therapy, and all these other angles. Those are the kinds of centers where I feel like, besides schools, 𝗬𝗢𝗨 can be well positioned and would do good work. On the adult side, I've been targeting usually more people at a higher level corporate position, because that specific sector is typically more burned out and really questioning what they're doing with their lives. They've typically checked all the boxes that society has programmed them into believing that they have to do: the kids, the car, the house, the cats, the dogs, the whatever. And they're there, they've done that. And they're in this sense of emptiness.
Okay.
Of now what do I do with my life? And because I was there, just to fill in a quick gap, a few years after I started with 𝗬𝗪𝗨, I discovered how to design websites. I started to work in that field. I then got hired by an SEO company in Marbella that was starting out, got trained in that industry before it really spiked. And that basically diverted me from what was writing 𝗬𝗪𝗨 and all of that I was starting to build up. The move to Canada is what basically just broke the shell and made me realize I don't really want to keep doing this for the rest of my life, but what do I want to do? And that's where the writing and 𝗬𝗪𝗨 came back up into my consciousness. So that was my tipping point. And because I was there and I realized I was at the pinnacle of something, everything looked great in my life until I realized what I really wanted to do. That's the kind of people I like to work with, who have hit that wall. And now they're questioning.
So I think really it applies to everybody at some stage in their life.
True.
Now, particularly more so maybe in that corporate kind of world, whether they still want to be in that corporate world or not, but they're starting to question things.
Yeah.
But then how are you going to reach out to them? So
generally,
what do you use, and what is it that we can help you with, and where are you on that kind of that journey? Because as I said, everybody, if you could say everybody could do with it, but then where do you go targeting everybody? Right. So sometimes you need to niche it down to, you said people are more in the corporate world. And then so you can then niche it down even closer to people in this industry sector, in this geographic or something. Because if you're going to do programs, are they going to be one-to-one programs typically, or in a group, or?
Again, I've worked with group more on site. When I was in 𝗪𝗦𝗧, I was doing a workshop there with adults. It really depends. Now that we're more virtualized again, I'm open to working one-on-one. Teamwork could also be an option. I haven't really focused on that yet. But again, if we look at 𝗬𝗪𝗨 as a team building exercise, I can definitely tap into groups and work at a team level, even if it's virtually. I'm not averse to traveling, but I just know that.
Okay. And you mentioned earlier on that you have an IT experience as well.
Yeah.
So how did you get into the IT?
Basically through 𝗬𝗪𝗨. My brother started working for an IT company, building and fixing computers. And he bought a book on HTML design. And it just sat on the shelf for a while, and I picked it up, and finally he installed a computer at home. And I just started playing around. Something was calling to me to say, with HTML, and something was telling me, look at this, because the internet is a thing that you're going to need. And I looked at it for 𝗬𝗪𝗨. So I basically started to work on how to design my first website, put up my images of my cards. And I literally started without knowing what SEO was at the time, because again, there were far less websites back in 2000 than there are now. It was much easier to optimize or position without doing much work. But the work I'd done on the website was good enough to position owl gifts, handmade owl gifts, and people were starting to email me from New York, from Mexico. Can you make me a personalized owl for my friend? And I was shipping off these little owls and making all sorts of fun stuff. And I loved it because I was getting paid for what I love to do. And that's how I started to learn how to do websites. People started to hire me freelance. And it was through my brother's company that they said, we want to sell websites to our clients. And then one of them, British bulldog lawyer, really tight with his money, wanted to justify every penny spent. Of course, he wanted to know what was the yield on his investment. Like, how do I know? What was the return on this? How do I know that putting this money out for this website, I'm going to make it back? And that's where I was connected with this other guy who was working on building his SEO company. And he gave me a few tips and hints. Here's how you research keywords. This is what you do. This is how you put them on the page. It was basically like going to the doctor. And he gave me this, this recipe. And he said, come back in 3 weeks and tell me how it went. He actually was watching the progression. And 3 months later, he called me and said, would you like to come work with me full time? And I'll teach you more about this. And I thought, full-time job? Okay, I'll get that pay. Thank you very much.
Okay.
And so that was what put me in that SEO seat without realizing it, distancing me from 𝗧𝗢𝗨, because then it was all client work and not so much my own stuff. But it gave me a good platform to then make myself independent from the company later on.
Well, you're getting kind of free training.
Well, it wasn't free training, it was paid training.
Paid training, and you're getting paid for it. Right? So
at the same time, I was learning a lot about good and bad management and people skills. Because even though my boss was great at SEO, he was horrendous at people management skills. And so that was already an indication of, okay, well, what is it like to work in a toxic team environment? Which later on in my coaching work, I realized this is how you can start to help people dissipate communications issues.
Yeah, so now, I mean, you should share your links here in the chat as well.
Okay, I will.
Right. So I guess you built your own website.
I did. I still do. I'd love to let it go and have someone else do it for me at some point.
All right. Okay. So what did you build it in? Did you build it in HTML or did you use WordPress or something?
First versions, yes. And then eventually when I finally discovered WordPress, I just started to switch everything over and then rework WordPress.
All right. Okay. So, yeah.
You can ask me. I already know.
Yeah. So now that we understand a bit more about your journey and what you've gone through and the different places that you've lived and your background and everything else, although there's always tons more to learn. So we've got a snippet of information from you. So, yeah, I mean, I can see definitely some synergies because I've started connecting myself with different people that work in kind of the educational for children areas around the world. And we've even had as guests here, teachers and others, but more so around education and seeing these kind of problems that children, not just children are having, but I mean adults, but this is with a focus on children. Now, I just connected with a woman who will be a guest at some point in the US, and then she's connected to a bigger network of people in Australia and other places. And then funny enough, yesterday I connected with a woman in Edinburgh that also creates kids' books for exactly the same reason, because she's an ex-teacher and she sees these problems as well. So it seems that the teachers and the world are waking up to, like, something has to change. We cannot stick with the way things are. We're just going to create kids that are going to have problems. Yeah. And not just kids, because then they become adults will have problems. And adults that already have problems, what we're going to do with those? Right. So it's kind of a snowball effect. So, but you have to start somewhere. So you can start, you can capture both at the same time. You can do the kids and the adults, because if you don't, their disillusionment and their feeling lost and with themselves just leads to kind of like what you said about burnouts, and then before you know it, then they're doing something silly. And that's what you need to avoid. So where is it that we can help you on your journey? What is it that is your biggest challenge at the moment?
I would love to be generating more book sales. The novel right now is off the shelves. I'm actually re-editing it so I can then translate the new version into Spanish. But the Color Your Life book, I would love to see that in more places, being used more, and to create more of that snowball effect of people talking about 𝗧𝗢𝗨𝗥, because that's the quickest and easiest thing that. So
these are in English and Spanish at the moment.
Correct. Yeah.
Okay. All right. And so it pretty much covers a lot, though, being English and Spanish. And these are kind of programs that are already available? I mean, if you wanted to do a program with kids or teachers or whoever or adults, these are already.
Yeah, because the workshop that I did in 𝗪𝗦𝗧 previously, that's all built.
Okay, could you explain
whether I can? Yeah.
Yeah, so sorry to interrupt. Could you explain a bit more about kind of your programs and how they're structured and what is it that you offer?
What I offer is basically helping people tap back into their desires and, as I say, rekindle their dreams. A lot of people don't even like the word dream anymore because it just seems so far and distant and airy-fairy. But that's what we all have as kids. We all have these ideas of what we can become, what we would like. And it's helping people rekindle that. Even if they're already doing what they love, there's usually some part of their lives that's still not quite working. So we can take that inner essence and help them apply it to that area. The programs, the workshops start working through attitude, beliefs, core values, understanding them, helping improve them, helping understand if we're really moving in the direction of what we want or if we're somehow unconsciously running away from something that we don't want, because that's where most people's problems lie. They think they're moving forward because they're constantly moving, but they're actually just running away from the same problem. It just shows up in different places with different faces. So when we can get back to the core of who a person is, what they believe about themselves, about their lives, what kind of attitude they have, we can actually start to shift into a more positive view.
So this is done, you can do this online as well?
Yeah.
Okay, and it is over a number of weeks or months or
I can
sessions?
Usually it's by session. I do program block sessions, but if it's a workshop with a company, I can also set different timelines and work either pure workshop in group or then assign part individual work so that they can be more self-paced. Right.
It can all be done in the group, the whole thing, or the certain parts that would need to be kind of more personal?
I mean, usually there's always some individual work, even though in a group environment, we'll talk about certain aspects of whatever the subject is of the day. But there's always a little bit of personal work to do, whether we have the time to do it in the workshop. Okay, spend the next 15 minutes writing out your values, exploring them, and then do an exercise with the person right next to you.
Okay.
If there's time for that, if not, then we do it individually, and then they can come back to me privately with that.
And to attract people in, kind of your hook to attract some attention and awareness of what you do you have any kind of promotional stuff, or what is it that we could send out or use as maybe some sales or marketing collateral?
Right now, I've just got my website, but I have been reworking on some, not graphics, but some kind of PDF.
Okay. And do you offer
the essence of that?
Okay. And do you offer like a free kind of consultancy call or something that if someone wanted to know more about it, they can set up a call with you?
And that's part of going back to how you asked me how I connect with people. I've used LinkedIn a lot with that. And usually I'll build up a conversation and basically have that introductory conversation where we get to know each other. And then out of that is usually when people start to say, I'd like to do more of this.
Okay.
I like how you work. Now tell me how we can work together.
Okay. And more about kind of the proactive approach. I mean, there is one that you can advertise and stuff on LinkedIn and whatever. But if you wanted to reach out to a particular company, maybe because you understand that company, they're firing a lot of people are going, there's a lot of burnouts, you've spoken to an HR person and this problem. So more the proactive way is there companies that you would think it'd be great to go and work with them? Or
I was targeting before this little life shift the last few months, people in the tech world, because I can fully relate to them. I've been in the tech world, I've hit the walls, I've questioned what I was doing. Is this what I really want? And because the tech world is so consuming, and we allow ourselves to think that it's more consuming than we need to let it be, that's where I can help a lot of people in that space as well. Just carve back time for them and not feel like they're just robots.
Yeah, no, I see. I mean, because you understand the tech talk as well. When they're talking about things, then you understand the acronyms and things that they use. So it makes more sense rather than going to do something, I don't know, with cosmetics or something, and you think, well, I don't know that area, or whatever it may be.
At the end of the day, we're all human beings.
Yeah.
And once you start talking to any human being, whatever industry they're in, about whether they're even just happy with who they are, you break the ice.
Have you got any, sorry, I forgot to ask the audience, like for questions, or have you got any questions to them?
Oh, I do, and I can't remember what my question was. You must have it there, don't you?
Well, let's have a look.
I sent it
I
to
have
you.
2 quick tips for you from your websites to put link to your LinkedIn pages. So this will maybe move the audience back and forth.
Oh yeah.
I don't know whether it's good or bad. But
Childhood dream.
Right, yes. If you were to think of a childhood dream that still keeps coming up for you and you haven't done anything about, what would your life be like if you were to fulfill that dream?
So we need to answer now.
You can spend the weekend writing about it and thinking about it. But if you have an answer, I'd love to hear it.
Well, I'm on the way to fulfill mine, so everything good.
Come on. Boyan must. I know Boyan's childhood dream.
I shared this already somehow. My dream was not that strong now to be an astronaut.
Oh,
So, and I was so close, James knows. I was in Cape Canaveral.
Oh, wow.
So yes, but they arrested me because I wanted to jump to the space shuttle directly. And it doesn't look like this, obviously. No, this is a joke about the US. But I was really close to where they go up.
So how do you, I mean, now that you're an adult, and well, I think so, do you play with the kids? I mean, do you put like your underpants on your head to pretend you're a spaceman?
Me?
Yes.
yes.
No.
No?
I put headsets like
Mine.
Emily.
Hi, Emily.
How are you,
Hi.
Emily?
Hi,
You
Emily.
got lost. It's 1 hour before, not.
I was driving. Yeah.
Good evening.
We're
Hi,
waiting
Emily.
for you.
Right. Oh, 1 second. Emily, so thanks for joining. So because Emily normally sings at the beginning, and then she's going to sing at the end. So, but there's a good question. So Karen has just asked the question about, maybe you can ask the question, and just to see if Emily is doing what her dream is.
Okay. So, hi, Emily. Nice to meet you officially.
Hi.
My question to the group is, if there's some childhood dream that you haven't yet fulfilled that still comes up for you, when you think about it, you feel a pull to do something, what would your life be like once you achieve it? What is it, and what would your life be like?
Are you asking me personally?
Yes.
Yep.
Oh, okay. Well, I would say I'm half doing it. So my dream was always to be a singer.
Mhm.
And I mean, I do perform, but I would like to be able to perform more and maybe teach less. But I mean, obviously, then I have to weigh up, the financials don't really fit. You don't earn money from singing, which is fine. I love doing it. I'm happy not to earn money from it, but also need to live. So, yeah.
So
Emily,
the dream would be to be making money off of singing. And the
Or
belief
just
is you can't.
or be financially independent, so I don't even need to worry about money, and therefore I can just
Okay.
sing all the time. That would also be probably a more realistic option, I would imagine.
That's good. I'm financially independent. I don't have finance options.
Yeah. So Emily, you should go back and listen to this recording when we're done, because Karen talks a lot about, I mean, the character that she created, 𝗬𝗢𝗨𝗥, and it's used particularly with children, right? For children education, children emotional kind of problems and stuff like that. So I know that you work with children. Maybe you can just say what you do, because Karen, you know what Emily does?
I don't currently know.
Okay.
Besides singing.
Yeah, no, so I work with kids. I am
Okay.
well, I'm partly a singing and piano teacher, but then I also do camps for holiday camps for kids and
Okay.
birthday parties and after school clubs.
Which area?
Which, as in, like,
where are you
oh, which
located?
area? Aubonne, Lausanne, French-speaking Switzerland, basically.
Okay.
But it's interesting that you work with emotions with kids, because is it that you do? I'll have to listen to
Part of what I do, yeah.
Okay, because I wanted to create I do activity days, and one of the ones I really wanted to do was about building confidence, because obviously as a singing teacher, I see that kids, sometimes they have the most amazing voice, but they are so, they have no confidence at all. And so I'd love to do like a workshop on, you know, being a little bit more resilient and yeah, just building confidence and stuff. I will definitely listen to your recording. That sounds.
Yeah, you should. It's great. So yeah, and then I suggest that everybody connects as well. So in the chat, there's some links as well, and you should share your LinkedIn. I think LinkedIn is one of the best ways that we all connect.
Hold on, where is my LinkedIn?
Emily, are you on LinkedIn?
Yeah, I just don't really use it, but I have an account, but I'm never on there.
Why? You're missing all the nice stuff.
I've never sort of, I don't know.
Because then you'd know every.
You get some other, maybe more important.
Yeah. The thing is, you'd know every guest that's coming because I share it in the chat. We have a group featured business chat.
Yeah. I should use it more, but yeah.
Anyway, so you should all connect. So yeah, Karen, we're kind of gone over the time a bit. It's got kind of reversed order at the moment. So is there any questions to anyone else that's got any questions to Karen before we kind of wrap up that bit? No, any questions that you've got to the audience? Any more questions?
No, I think the one I've left you with is a good one to chew on for a bit.
All right. And I know they're already starting to reach out to some people. So with Boyan and Connie, and I mean, you should reach out to all the people here. And yeah, Emily can catch up on the record, and then I suggest that maybe if it resonates, then you have a call as well. Okay. So Karen, have you got anything that you want to leave us with just before we kind of close that bit and have a song from Emily?
I think just always remember who you are, no matter what is going on in your world or the world. That's what keeps us strong and keeps us focused. And always look for the joy where you can.
Yes,
Thanks.
thank you. I second that. But it definitely helps knowing who you are, because then you can guide your path to what you want.
Besides your name.
Sorry?
I said you need to know who you are besides your name.
Or your title.
Yeah, exactly. So Karen, it's been wonderful having you as our 79th guest.
Thank you.
And as I said at the beginning, 79 resonates with you because you were born in 79.
That's my birth year, yeah.
Right, excellent. So actually, a lot of the numbers have just magically resonated with a lot of the guests, and they said, "Oh, that's a good number. That is my whatever number." Right. So thank you once again for being a great guest, and
thank you.
We've learned a lot more about you, and yeah, other people will see the recording once we share it in the group as well, so people that missed the show can catch up on the recording. Okay. So thank you once again, and yeah, Emily, right?
Yes.
So
Thank you for coming. Jem was asking me to sing. Not on this.
So Emily's not been feeling too good lately, have you? Been under the weather?
Yes.
And how are you feeling at the moment?
I mean, not amazing. I have a bit of a cough, a sore throat, but yeah.
But good enough to sing.
Well, I've chosen a very easy, low song, so.
A low song. Okay.
Yeah.
All right. So, right, if you can just get yourself ready, and then I will warm up the audience. Right. What are you going to sing today?
It's called About You Now from the 𝗓𝗓𝗓𝗏. It's such an old song.
Right. Ah, by the way, Karen plays the guitar.
Ah, nice.
That's a goal.
Right. So you can do a jam and say, oh, Emily, you know Take That, don't you?
Yeah, I mean, I know of them.
You know of them?
Wow. Yeah, no, I mean, I know them, but I don't know. I couldn't name you a song or anything.
Really? I must be too old then. Right. I can't believe that people don't know. Well, you know Robbie Williams, don't you?
Yeah.
And you know Gary Barlow.
Yeah.
Well, Gary Barlow's kind of the lead singer of Take That.
Okay. Oh, I thought Gary Barlow was Coldplay. So I'm mixing everything up.
No. Oh,
I know
okay.
Robbie Williams, but
Okay, all of this modern music, you see, I mean, you've forgotten the older stuff. Right. Anyway, so you're going to sing something that I don't know then, because it'll be modern. Is it modern?
yeah, well, 𝗓𝗓𝗓𝗏, is that modern? I guess it is quite modern. Well, I mean, they haven't existed for a long time.
All right then. Is this a new look with your glasses?
This is my ill look, my no effort, because I'm too ill look.
Are you going to like take them off and then?
If I do, I can't see anything.
I don't need glasses, but when I put it, it doubles my IQ.
Okay. All right. Okay. So if you give us a song then.
All right. One second. I've lost my pedal. Okay. It was so easy that night. Should have been strong, yet I lied. Nobody gets me like you. Couldn't keep hold of you then. How would I know what you meant? There was nothing to compare to. I know everything changes, all the cities and faces, but I know how I feel about you. There's a mountain between us, but there's one thing I'm sure of, that I know how I feel about you. Can we bring yesterday back around? 'Cause I know how I feel about you now. I was dumb, I was wrong, I let you down. But I know how I feel about you now. All that it takes is one more chance. Don't let us kiss be our lives. Give me tonight and I'll show you. I know everything changes, all the cities and faces, but I know how I feel about you. Can we bring yesterday back around? 'Cause I know how I feel about you now. I was dumb, I was wrong, I let you down. But I know how I feel about you now. Not a day passes by, not a day passes by when I don't think about you.
Bravo.
Amazing.
Excellent.
Thank you.
Emily, did you have a microphone?
No, I didn't this time.
Oh, well, it sounds excellent, even without.
Oh, good. Thank you.
Right, that's a wrap then. I mean, we're pretty much done. So, Karen, once again, thank you for being a fantastic guest.
Thank you.
If you want to be in the book, yeah, Emily's in the book, going to be in the book. Boyan's going to be in the book. I'm going to be in the book.
Email me about the book.
Connie
Will be in the book.
Connie wants to be in the book.
Well, wait, should I be in the book or should 𝗬𝗢𝗨𝗥 be in the book? Or is this a two-person thing?
No, you can have 𝗬𝗢𝗨𝗥 as you. But anyway, just digressing a little bit. For those that are in the book, then you should get a link from Paul, the publisher, to join the Publishing Mastery, and then we are all going to chat and everything in there. So that'll be the place, right? So Karen, we've just had a kickoff call, so a Zoom call. It was recorded. So if you want to be in the book, then there's still a place open if you want to consider it. So I can send you details.
Send me the information and I'll have a look.
Yeah, and also Connie, if she has second thoughts. Yeah. Okay, so once again, thank you for coming on. Next week is the last one before Easter, so we have a special guest next week. And then,
excuse me, because we are international. Our Easter is maybe a month later. So,
sorry, say again.
Our Easter in Bulgaria.
Yeah.
Actually, the Eastern Europe is such a colorful of cultures, and so it confuses the Western people. But this is good. I get happy Easter much longer than.
I'm just doing it based on school holidays. I should say it's not really Easter or summer or whatever. It's school holidays.
Yes.
Because that is kind of
it can be a full month Easter holiday.
Yeah. So next week is the last one, and then there's a break for 3 weeks, and then we reconvene again. Oh no, next week is not the last one. The 1st of April is the last one. So we've got 2 more. We've got 2 more, and then
my kids are on vacation from 1st of April as well. So
we've got
this
2
overlaps, but not the Easter.
We've got 2 interesting guests coming up next week. I mean, next week is an interesting guest, and the one after that is a lady from Australia that's just started a business. She's a kind of an entrepreneur, traveled around Australia to find herself, and then she's starting a business about love and how we should express more love in the workplace. So that'd be interesting. I see there's connections with all of us, with all the different guests. It's just about how we can then harness this to actually help one another, because we could be a fantastic business within our own business by working more together. But anyway, we can discuss that another day. So thank you very much, everyone. Have a wonderful weekend.
You too.
And as soon as I put the recording together, I'll drop you the link in the chat on LinkedIn, and then everyone have that. And for Emily, I'll put it on WhatsApp for you.
Okay, thank you.
Right. So have a great weekend.
You
Have a
too.
great
Bye.
weekend.
Bye.
Thank you, Gary.
Bye.
That's nice.
Bye.